Awesome. Well, Ray, welcome, welcome. Thank you. So good to see you. I've
Thank you,
missed
Krishna.
speaking to you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. I've missed speaking to you over the months. And suddenly, 2 days ago, I realized, oh my God, I haven't talked to Ray. And sure enough, I pick up my phone and I saw a text from you. And in India, they would say you would live 100 years. People like you, I wish would live 100 years to make the world a better place. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So our friends may not know who you are, but I want to tell them that you are one of the coolest, finest people that I've met in a while. And I am very fortunate to have you in my life. And I wanted to kind of maybe let you introduce yourself a little bit about all the fun things you have done in your life and how we can talk about a topic that's becoming more dear to me and of concern, which is how to unify our country.
Okay, I'd be happy to, Krishna, but I feel the same way about you. You've been a blessing for me to get to know over the last few years, and it's uh, it's a blessing of friendship and a blessing of love. So thank you for your friendship. The work that you do is really phenomenal. It's pretty multifaceted with your coaching, your mentoring, your book writing, all the other work you do in the community, in the business world, teaching. So it's very impressive. But to me, the most important is really our genuine friendship. I grew up as a middle child of three children. Um, Grew up in South Park predominantly. Early in my life, was abandoned by my father at a very young age. My mother took care of us after she got us out of an orphanage we were put in, and she raised us till I was 8, and then married my stepfather when I moved to South Park. And I still live in South Park. I met my wife at 13. We've been together now for 51 years. We have three sons, 37, 39, 41. Matt, Mike, and Tim. They're all married. They collectively have 10 grandchildren. Our grandchildren go from Bodie at age 2 to Ty age 13. And six are in Pittsburgh, two of my sons, and Michael is in Connecticut. He and his wife and four of our grandchildren with them. So my wife and I, Johnine, have been married for 43 years this year. It's been a tremendous blessing in my life. And I started my life as a design engineer with Westinghouse Electric Transportation after graduating from Carnegie Mellon. Worked in that company for 30 years, and then went to work for Wabtec and worked in that company for 10 years. The commonality is they both were George Westinghouse companies. And after just a little bit over 40 years, retired a year and a half ago, and enjoying a host of things to keep me busy, but am theoretically retired.
Theoretically retired. I think you've been as busy, if not more busy, since you've been retired, Ray.
Yeah, it's busy with all good things. I've been doing a lot of work with the food bank here in the South Hills. I work there 40 to 80, volunteer 40 to 80 hours a month, and do a lot of work with the Trolley Museum. That's the industry I came out of. Do a lot of work with Carnegie Mellon, Science Center, a lot of work in my church. A lot more time I have available to spend with the grandchildren and children. So it's all good stuff. It's the kind of work, if you want to call it work, but it's really labor of love, and it's work that doesn't put stress on you like your vocational work. At least my experience over 40 years. It's really a significant difference in terms of just how you feel day in and day out without having the kind of stress you have when you're working for a living.
Well, I got to witness and watch your service yesterday, which was very clean and clear. And I really liked many of the distinctions you made about, for example, fear of death you were talking about yesterday. That's such a topic that, as you said so clearly, a lot of people don't like to talk about it, even though everything is impermanent. The more we get familiar with it, it feels like the easier we can handle it. But coming back to the topic I wanted to talk about today and get your perspective, because I've been struggling with this question for a while, which is what is separating us as people in this country, as well as what would it take to bring us back together. And I want to share a little episode from anecdote from my past. This was probably a late 80s, Ray. I was living in Middle Tennessee, and there were a bunch of people, each with a large piece of land because this was rural Tennessee, and nobody knew their neighbor. And suddenly there was an announcement saying there was going to be a nuclear waste site put in their county.
Mm.
And all these people just came banded together to unify and say no. And that was so I remember that so distinctly because when I moved there, I found this amazing group of friends and really different vocation, a tobacco farmer, a puppeteer, a carpenter. I mean, literally a whole variety of people meeting every weekend in somebody's home to be together as a community. And I was the
Mhm.
outsider, moved in from Indiana and somehow ran into one of them. And I used to get invited to each of these homes every Sunday. And that was like such a pleasant blessing in my life. And when I explored to find out how they became friends, that's how I got to know the backstory of all these people fighting for a common cause to keep that nuclear site out of their county. And they actually succeeded. So when I saw COVID show up, I said, wow, here's an opportunity, a common enemy. We can all band together to see how we can overcome this and take care of it. But unfortunately, I didn't see that happen. So that kind of really discouraged me. And I've been struggling with that. What would it take for us to come together? And then the flip side of that, what is it that separates us? So I just wanted to, given your wisdom, I just wanted to get some perspective on what you think about it.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the comment you made about death real quick, though. I think the ability to accept Krishna, the accept death and the inevitable occurrence of death, I think actually helps people to better live,
Yes.
uh, not to better prepare for death. That's inevitable, but actually to focus on life as opposed to focusing on death. That's You see a lot of people, especially as they get older, all they're focused on is dying, and that can go on for decades. So um, that's one of one of the messages that we talked about anxiety and fear earlier, and if you can rid yourself, lift yourself of that anxiety and fear, I think it helps you to focus then on living and having joy and happiness and gratification in the process. When we look at the question of coming together, I think um, you know what people what people want is people want to have a purpose. They want to have an opportunity to contribute. Um, I think everybody genuinely wants to have a purpose in their life that that ultimately provides some type of gratification, that they feel good about what they're doing, that they feel like they're a valuable part of their family unit, neighborhood unit, whatever they associate themselves with. And when COVID first happened, I also noticed a very, very big difference in people's behavior compared to now. And the behavior at first, if I don't know if you witnessed this, but um, I noticed it on the roads. People were extremely polite and considerate everywhere you went. People were genuinely, I think, uh, caring toward one another. It's gone away now. It's it's almost a year of this, 9 months of this, and the aggression has come back, and you know people's short patience and things like that. I've noticed a distinct difference over the course of this year, and I guess that's to some extent the loss of empathy.
Mm.
I think people had a common problem, a common issue, um, a common need, and were genuinely empathetic toward one another. And I think that has gone away. That's my impression. It doesn't help that it's right in the midst of this political year. I think people associate the animosity that exists in politics as being something very unique, but that's because they forget about 4 years ago and they forget about the 4 years before that. I mean, it's politicized is the word everybody uses, and it's to me it's almost disgraceful, the things that go on, and they get worse and worse over time. The people don't treat one another professionally. Um, they don't treat one another as human beings. And there's so much bitterness and hatred that gets projected instead of focusing on the positives. And and that's maybe a little bit human nature too. Maybe because it's easier to attract people that way, unfortunately, to attract people by spreading hate, spreading fear, as opposed to spreading love. And, maybe to a lot of people, it's a sign of strength as opposed to a sign of weakness. Um, but I think the only way you ultimately are able to bring people together is you do that out of love. You don't do that out of people have to have some higher level common purpose and common good that they want to achieve, that they want to pursue together. And when you can get people uh, to focus on that and to ascribe to that, I think then you'll get people to ultimately work toward the same goal. You can see it in companies. You can see it in uh, organizations. You can see it in churches. You can see it in communities. You certainly can see it in political parties. So, um, and a lot of times the common purpose does get almost dictated out of necessity, but it doesn't have to. It can be developed, I think, by people that have strategic minds and that have empathetic hearts.
I remember you telling me, Ray, that, I mean, you have run companies, organizations with 27,000 people. And I remember you distinctly telling me about how you instilled values in the organization, and it was not just words. Would you like to share the way you kind of built that value system through almost every individual? I thought that story you told me a few months ago, maybe a year ago, was fascinating. You recall that?
I don't recall exactly the one that you're referring to, Krishna, but what I would tell you is that in an organization, I think again there's a purpose, and then there's values. And I think it's a tops down, bottoms up process.
Mm.
And the values have to be sincere. I think it takes someone in a leadership role to define what values the corporation or company or organization will stand for. That should be a process that is as much as possible comprehensive and inclusive to help to ultimately finalize those values. But once those values are established, they really need to be values that are lived. And so, to me, when we implemented values at Adtrans Bombardier, then more recently at Wabtec, we spent a lot of time to develop values, a lot of time to communicate values. The important part was setting an example about commitment to values. So that meant day in and day out, the first person who had to demonstrate that commitment was me.
Mhm.
And as soon as you start to, uh, play games or be insincere or be hypocritical about that, you're dead. You can forget it. Um, but if you reinforce positive examples, positive uh, uh, commitment to individual values, and equally, you address any kind of negative actions or behavior toward values. Ultimately, you're going to even naysayers and people that are not believers are going to come. They're going to come into the whole and ascribe to that value system. Um, so I think it really comes down to individual example, your day-to-day example, and your commitment to values that you put in place. One of our stated values was safety. Wabtec
I was just
had
going to bring you back to the safety conversation. Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
the Wabtec had the, an abysmal safety performance before I went over there. I was frankly shocked because it was one of the things that we really focused on heavily in my previous company. And the end result, just to come back to the personal example, when we put that value system in place, and everywhere I went, I talked about safety. I went to all the safety conferences. I went with the safety observers. I went talked about it in individual business unit meetings. But I also joined the National Safety Council and became a board member there and very active there. Not because I needed more work to do, but because I wanted people in Westinghouse Daybreak, which was a company founded for the sole purpose of saving lives by George Westinghouse. I wanted people to understand how important that responsibility was.
Wow. That, I mean, I'm just pausing to just soak that in. The fact that air brakes were designed to save lives, that's the purpose, and safety has to kind of fall from there, even on your own individual behavior. So I see how the word hypocrisy can come in. So our mission is to be provide safety, and then there's no safety for the people. I can see why you took that responsibility so seriously, Ray. Ray, I've missed our breakfasts and lunches since March, but I'm delighted that at least we get to do this on
Yeah.
Zoom, and I'm glad we are here. So, coming back to the original question, so what do you think needs to happen right now? I mean, it's interesting that we are speaking today, one day before the elections. Tomorrow, most likely nothing will happen, but I'm concerned what happens day after tomorrow. Let's say there is no clear winner, or there's a clear winner. Given that the factions are so separated, what's a unifying theme for the country, the people to come together? Because we have a lot of work to do. I mean, there are a lot of people hurting right now, a lot of people hurting.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we need to do at an individual level, on up, in your opinion, that as a community, as neighbors, at what level? So, since you are a very clear thinker of both top down, bottom up, what are some ideas that you can think of that we could spread in our communities?
So I think first of all, what we need to get through the election. There needs to be a decision. I think the worst thing that can happen is no decision, and uh, I am worried that both parties have said that unless there's a clear and decisive vote. I think both parties have set this up for a court battle, and that's liable to drag out for a long, long time. Months. That would be very destructive for our people in the country. Um, but I'm hopeful that there'll be a decision, and I think what has to happen at the presidential level is there needs to be uh, a very clear articulation of of what the vision is. Obviously we got to deal with the COVID, the coronavirus. We got to deal with the economy. We have to deal with a whole host of critical issues. But just saying that it's getting better or I'm going to follow science is is not the solution. There needs to be a better discussion about what it means to various sectors of our community. Um, if it's going to be handled at the local level, at the state level, I think it's unrealistic to handle at the national level. There certainly can be a lot of initiatives and infrastructure support, but I don't think you can make mandates across the entire country since it's so vastly different from Florida, Montana, Maine to California. Um, the on a and I think in general, people need to be able to support their families. You know, so fundamentally, the economy is critical. People working is critical. You can't just say, "Hey, we're gonna take the approach that we're gonna put our head in the sand and not do anything until the virus goes away." Lord only knows when that's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the vaccines work, maybe they don't. Dr. Fauci is saying it's 2022 now. Can you imagine 2022? And if a decision is taken, hey, we're going to back off and shut down. Um, there are very fundamental issues to deal with. I see it with my grandkids. Just having to stay home and do their schoolwork. I mean, first of all, they don't like it. You would think, hey, you get to stay home. They'd be the happiest guys in the world. No, they don't like it. They want to go to school. They want to be with their friends. They want to learn there. They don't learn very well at home. So uh, I think that's an issue that has to be dealt with uh, harder for the teachers, I think, than for the students, to be honest with you. They're probably the ones that are really at risk, especially the older teachers. So you asked the question, what from a bottoms up point of view can you do? I think you answer the question one on one. You do what you can do for who you can do for. So if I can specifically do something to take some burden off you, to take some pain off you, to relieve some anxiety for you, that's what I want to do. That's why I'm working at the food bank. I started in February just as COVID hit, and I've increased my hours there, not because there's no risk, because many people have told me don't work there. It's dangerous and you're interacting with a lot of people, a lot of people that you don't know. They come in, they don't have masks on, they're supposed to. Um, you're not supposed to go in their car, put food, but their trunks are full because some of them are living out of their trunks. So you have to. So for me, I look at it on a very personalized basis, individualized basis, and where I have the opportunity, whether it's at the food bank, at church, or in our neighborhood. Yesterday, I helped a family move. I was the only one above 30 um, that needed help. Then I pick up and I try to do it in a safe way, but I don't want to just, you know, shut down and not be able to support other people. So I think it's a very individualized answer because my sister who has leukemia, she won't basically go out of her house. So I think you got to use judgment on a case by case basis. And my place isn't to judge you, my sister, or anyone else how you deal with it. I think it's got to be a decision that is properly balanced for you. And we do need to respect this terrible disease. It's it's truly a pandemic, and so we need to respect it. But at the same time, I think what we can do for other people, we have
I really remember you using a term when we spoke last week about respecting the dignity of people because I mean, I know you're wearing your protective gear and everything else, but and you were given policies that they got to open their trunk and you go leave food in their trunk and don't get into their car. But as you mentioned, some of them are living in their car and their trunks are full, and you don't want to deny them the food. That's really the
Mhm.
purpose because they came to the food bank for food because the trunk is full. You don't want to deny them the food, I guess is the best way to
Right.
put it. So at that moment, what do? You open the door to put it in the back seat. And yes, you are risking it, but we hope that uh, it's sporadic and not every car is that situation because then it's the amount of exposure. Also, I think if it's a
Mhm.
once in a while, then I think it's okay. But you're taking as much as the precautions as you possibly can, yet deliver the purpose of the food bank.
Yeah. Let me give you an example, Krishna. So I've gotten to know these people, it's been months, every other week they come for food. It's about, we distribute about 4 hours on Thursday, 6 hours on Friday. So 10 hours a week where I see them face to face, and I've gotten to know a lot of the people. Certainly recognize all the people. Um, so a couple of weeks ago, a lady, she's just probably a little bit younger than me. Maybe she's 60, late 50s. She always would have her dad in the seat next to her because her dad is probably around 90, and she takes care of
Mhm.
him. And she came in, and they have to wait in line till they move up, space available to move up. She moved up, it was her turn. She moved up, I was waiting, and when up I saw she was crying. Coming in the food bank was crying. And she's, she's just a wonderful person, right? And I saw her father in the passenger seat. And normally you would walk up to the car and you'd ask them what kind of meat they want, and then you'd go get the meat and get the food, put it in the trunk. Okay, you can go. So I stopped and I knelt down next to the window and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "My father took ill yesterday. They had to put him in a Manor nursing home." She said, "I'm really worried, because the sickness, but I'm more worried because of COVID."
Mhm.
That's a nursing home that had incidents earlier. And and so I said to her, your father's going to be okay. You know, I said, let me pray with you. So I took the time, a couple minutes, pray for her father, her, and then I asked her, um, that's what I'm. That's what I mean by treating people with dignity. Everybody has different issues that they're in there, and until you take the time to listen, until if you're even willing to observe, you'll never know what they are.
Hmm.
So so that's why I say it's got to be an individualized solution approach to whatever individualized problems or needs exist um, with the people you interact with. We can't help everyone. I know you have a very compassionate heart. I know you are. You want to help as many people as you can, and you take the blessing that you have as it comes, person by person by person. You have the opportunity, and you get to decide how you're going to respond.
Beautiful. In fact, you touch both the key words, I think, empathy and compassion, right? As much as we can empathize, not every each one of us can empathize with their situations because we don't know what they're actually going through. But I
Mm-hmm.
think having compassion and care is so needed at this time because there's so much going on. I mean, it's COVID is just one of the issues, right? As you said,
Yeah.
the economy, a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are having to stay in a small house all together because the kids are home
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to work, but they can't. There's not easy daycare available. And then you have other financial struggles for some, health struggles for others, caring for their families and not being able to visit their, some people are ailing. Hopefully, I really, I'm praying that we come together as a unit. I mean, the key phrase I always remember is united, almost we stand, divided we fall. And I think the test of united we stand, divided we fall, we are there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really hoping post election we start towards united we stand. Because as you say, every election creates some level of consternation between parties. But post election, we have 4 years not to deal with that and come together because we have real crises that we need to address. Otherwise, we hurt ourselves as a humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think part of where we need to be after the election is to be in a place where people see the opportunity um, for them as an individual or for them as a family unit to be able to find their role, find their place in this economy. Um, people need to go back to work. People need to be educated. People need to be able to contribute in whatever way they define. What will kill this country is idle time.
Mm,
If people simply sit around and have nothing to do um, and have no jobs, um, it will just build on itself. I think it's a formula for failure.
mm,
Now, this country is made up of people who, if you look at the work ethic in America, I've worked in most countries around the world, many countries around the world anyway. Um, I think the combination of ingenuity and work ethic is in many ways unique in our country. And I see my son with the high school students that he teaches, and it always amazes me to see these young students who some people would label as as no chance for success. They go out and start their own companies as electricians, as carpenters, as kids that don't necessarily have an interest or capability to go through college. And you look even how ambitious uh, your kids are in terms of in a positive way, because ambition can be a negative, but in a positive way of wanting to, they have a thirst for knowledge, and they want to be in the middle of it so that they learn more, develop experience faster. And why do they want that? They want because they know they have the capability to do it on their own, and to be a vital part of society. And I am sure your kids are going to be extremely successful because of that.
Thank you.
That's the opportunity that we need to be able to create for people, not just coming out at all ages in this country. Um, I find the best way to motivate people is to give them challenging work to do. That's been my experience in union shops and non-union shops. When you actually engage someone, make sure that they know that they're important, that they're individually expected and have the opportunity to contribute, and then challenge them to contribute. 99 times out of 100, they're going to step up and do it. You'll get, you know, the one person who may be completely apathetic and, just as willing to sit and take a paycheck and let everybody else do it for him. But for the most part, that's not been my experience.
And yours is a lot of experience. So I have to believe that, and I buy into that independently because the key phrases I heard you say, Ray, were they need to know they matter and that their contribution is valuable. When they don't believe that their contribution matters, that's when the apathy begins. What difference do I make, right? If everybody is made visible, if their contribution is made visible to them, then they know. And I recall actually a railroad story. I was asked to help CSX build a training program to make their conductors fill in their forms better because they was losing a lot of money because of unbilled services. And the main reason they were not doing it is because they didn't know the impact of them not filling that form,
Mm-hmm,
because they were just pushing them, fill the form, fill the form. We're not making any
mm-hmm,
money. You won't get any bonus. Again, back to fear. But the training program we put together was really, if you fill this form incorrectly, this is the burden you're putting on your buddy in Jacksonville, right? And then they go, oh my God, okay, I don't want to hurt him. He's my friend. And
mm-hmm,
so you once, and then if you do this correctly, it makes his life easier, her life easier, and boom, 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 and everybody benefits. When they see their role in the chain, even though it might be filling one page with a pencil and faxing it at the end of the day,
mm-hmm,
they didn't realize the impact of that exercise. They just see it as a rote exercise they do every day, and what's the big deal? And I
mm-hmm,
hate that phrase, what's the big deal? Because I think that's when in it lacks motivation. I think everything, we don't need to make everything a big deal, but at least as it attribute the right weight to
mm-hmm,
the action so that they know that every little cog in the wheel has a contribution, otherwise they shouldn't be there.
mm-hmm. And that's Krishna, that was the beautiful thing about elevating safety to our number one value. because everybody can associate with safety. Everybody can associate with personal safety and with product safety and what it means to not provide that.
Mm,
So it's very easy for people to get on board and understand that, hey, I can make an impact on improving the safety environment for someone. So that that was one of the primary motivators for the people in our company worldwide.
wow. So now we have the other challenge with social media. I don't know if you got a chance to see the movie Social Dilemma.
I did,
Okay.
Gary.
So now that you know what that can do, even though I was aware of it 10 years ago, the potential impact, I couldn't even convince my own family
Yeah,
because until they see it, most people don't believe it.
yeah.
And especially when you're forecasting it or talking about it when it's not real, you could be labeled as a fearmonger, or you're getting too caught up in it or whatever. But I think having seen the movie, you can see the potential impact, and especially now, given what's going on, the amount the environment is ripe for bad actors to take over.
Mhm,
No? And because everybody has a broadcasting channel at their fingertips, so to speak. I mean, in the past, you needed a television station or a radio station to send out a message, right? Today, every person has that capability
mhm,
through the networks, and the networks are really Facebook and Twitter and other things. So anything you want to believe, you believe. And
mhm,
many times you don't even question the source. And you say, well, I saw it, I heard. And you don't, that's it. I heard
mhm,
someone say. I've heard
mhm,
that so many times, and it
mhm,
almost becomes truth. And I distinctly remember Marcus Aurelius' quote, which says, everything you see is not it's a perspective, not the truth. Everything you hear is an
mhm,
opinion, not a fact. I mean, that's as
mhm.
important right now, especially given the number of bullhorns we have to amplify whatever it is. So that is something I wanted to maybe get your, since you've also seen the movie, your perspective on post elections and in this time of lot of division, how we at the bottom, let's say at the from a bottom up perspective, how do we deal with that pressure coming in from, let's just say, bad actors?
I think it's difficult. It's difficult, something that we have to be, number one, aware of, and number two, vigilant about. And I I I, I think of my grandchildren, and I think the best way to prepare them is to make sure that they are intellectually curious and that they don't just readily accept everything that they see or everything that they hear. Um, the It's so easy, I think, to get brainwashed
Mhm.
with the propaganda that's available through social media. My oldest grandson Ty, we were getting ready to. He took his hunter safety course, and he was. I told him I would take him hunting with my brother 2 weekends ago, and that's the weekend we watched Social Dilemma. And on Saturday morning when we were going, he said, "You know, Papa," uh, I, I said, Did we told our kids to watch it with their kids?" And he said, I was talking about hunting with Dad, and for the next 2 hours, there were all kinds of hunting advertisements that come up on my phone.
Mhm.
I said, "Yeah, Ty." I said, "Well, you saw Social Dilemma, so you know
Yeah,
how it happens."
yeah.
So I think that the kids really need to be aware and need to be constantly reinforced to challenge, to be curious, and also not to. completely spend all their time on
I
the
mean,
social place.
you're talking about kids, but I'm concerned about adults, Ray.
The same. It's the same with adults. It's maybe even worse because adults have a more tendency, probably to be passive, less active, right? And and um, eh, and it comes back to the same thing, to have your own mind and to challenge the things that you hear. Uh, this is the perfect environment that we're in, to see just how misleading information is during this campaign
Mhm,
from both sides.
mhm.
People are saying everything.
Yeah,
I mean, you actually have uh, recorded messages that conflict with messages that, that the same person is saying, so on both sides. So, um, people need to think. That's why they have brains. They need to think and they need to challenge and they need to be slow to judge.
yeah, slow to judge. It's interesting since you brought up youngsters and older people. I think there's another thing to consider. I think the older you get, the more opinions you have. So when you find information that uh, substantiates and validates your position, you're more likely to want to read that or view that. And the algorithms are based on giving you much more of that based on that because they all want you to read more. And that just feeds and builds your position to much more. And now you start believing in it even more because you maybe in the beginning felt a little bit towards it and therefore you want some gratification like you said earlier, so you click that one, you get more, and then it starts delivering. I mean, I'll give you a very simple example here. As most of us, we've been doing a lot of home projects during this COVID time because we're sitting at home. And you know my schedule, Ray. I used to travel 2, 3 days a week, and now I'm sitting home, so finding things to do. I think I've done more housework and home projects in this 1 year than all 20 years combined in this house. And so recently I was looking for a fence for the vegetable garden. And I found it at Lowe's, not at Home Depot. Home Depot is a lot closer to our home, so I used to mainly go shop at Home Depot. But just one day searching on Lowe's for the fence, after that, the only ads I get are Lowe's. No, Home Depot has disappeared in one day
Hmm.
because I was poking around on
Wow.
Lowe's, and in one day the algorithm knew that now Krishna likes Lowe's, so let's give him Lowe's. I mean,
Hmm.
this is after watching Social Dilemma. I knew how it works, but I didn't figure out the speed with which it can monitor and change.
Hmm.
It was literally 1 or 2 days of me searching on Lowe's, and now Home Depot ads don't show up
Hmm.
because they
Well, you, good.
no, because they just think I think I've switched or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, did you see the interview, or it wasn't really an interview? It was a subcommittee hearing of the tech CEOs last week.
No, I did not. No.
Mhm. These guys were being challenged on what they block, what they don't block, and my conclusion after listening to them is that it's totally subjective, not at all objective.
Mm-hmm.
They all want to talk about the AI, expert engines and everything that has is doing all these roles. That there's no human intervention and all this. They set the roles for the AI engines, obviously, and basically they skew the news, skew the information. Information. It's not really information anymore. It's not factual. It's not objective. There's no way in the world anybody watching the media channels today could possibly say that the media channels are objective. I don't care which media channel you watch. If you watch CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox, OAN, uh, you can't report on the same thing and then be polar opposite results. It's impossible. And I remember a time when, uh, people may have been critical about the papers and the news, but at least you more or less got the same story wherever it was reported. It doesn't even exist today.
Right.
It's
It's all
incredible.
it's all become entertainment of sorts to attract attention and keep maintain attention, because before only the television stations ran on advertising. Now everything runs on advertising, which
Yeah,
everybody has to hold your attention, and unfortunately attention is held mainly through
yeah.
sensationalism and so on. So yes, we've got a bunch of challenges. So coming back to what actions we can take as regular people, I wanted to kind of maybe summarize some of the things we've talked about so that what can be actionable is one, what I heard loud and clear is treat every person with dignity as a human being, not based on their ideology, theology, whatever it may be. It's just everybody's a human being. So I think starting with treating every person with some care, like you said earlier in the COVID thing, they were more gracious and so on. I think we got to get back to that, because treating another person with kindness almost gets them back. And I remember this distinctly, Raven. I came to the US. When you walk on the street, people say hello to you. That never happened in India. And it was such a
Hmm.
pleasing change. Whether they meant it or not is a separate equation. Whether it was an automatic
Hmm.
reaction or not is not even on the table. Just the fact that people acknowledged you were there and said hello meant a lot,
Hmm.
because you're being acknowledged as
Hmm.
being visible. I think going back to
Yeah.
something as simple as that and trying to have more conversations in our community as to, hey, what is going on? I mean, we need to come together, because, again, back to united we stand, divided we fall. Especially when we fall, we're following to outsiders, not insiders, right? And it's
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
sad to see this happen. So I'm really hoping, if you had some thoughts in terms of specific things that people could do in their communities post elections to bring us back together, what might those be?
Well, again, I think it's the answer is different in individual circumstances, individual cases, but I think the general answer is start by listening.
Hmm.
Then you'll know what the needs are. And normally, people start by speaking, and once they're speaking, they tune out. They don't listen. So I think the whole idea of if you're really serious about wanting to help, to serve, support someone else, you got to take the time to listen to someone else's perspective, someone else's needs, to be able to respond to. And I think the next step is, it takes time, it takes energy. You have to sacrifice, you have to give in order to get. People are if you want to ultimately get a good outcome, you have to be willing to put time and energy and effort in to whatever that person or that issue is. So, uh, it's simple stuff like yesterday, I didn't have to go help this family move. I knew they were moving. I called them up. I said, "Hey, do you guys need help?" "Oh, we have some guys coming over to help us, blah, 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 blah." I said, "When are you going to move?" And they said, "We're going to get a truck at 8 o'clock on Saturday." So 8:30 on Saturday, I called. I said, "Hey, do you need help?" Well, guess what? Those young guys didn't come, So I got my car, and it's 20 minutes away. I drove over. Within a half hour, I was there, and Stayed there till 4 o'clock, helped them move 2 big truckloads. They're almost their whole house. So all that time I spent with them, I was able to listen to their pressures and needs, and what problems they were having, um, and to be able to give some advice, to be able to demonstrate some care, concern, to be willing to offer some help, because now I've built a relationship that would that offered trust and my respect for them, and vice versa. So it's case by case, I think, but I think it comes down to people being sincere, people being willing, people then taking the step to turn it into action. That's where a lot of times Krishna stops, because it's plenty of people want to do things, but my experience is it's really a minority of people that actually do them. I think the whole discussion about diversity is the same. No, it's impossible for me to believe that people don't understand the need for people to be treated fairly and equally, and whatever their background, race, creed is. I mean, I can't imagine there's people that aren't smart enough to understand that. There may be people too bigoted to accept it, but to understand it. So, uh, okay, but what are you going to do about it? If nobody does anything about it, guess what? Nothing changes. Nothing gets better. Probably gets worse. So the next step is the action step, and I think that's where the rubber meets the road. And if in the community people see others helping, serving, not with an agenda, then I think it's a little bit contagious, and then other people will do the same.
I love the word contagious. So here is positive contagion as
Yeah,
opposed to the one we're
yeah,
dealing with, which is the
exactly.
negative contagion. Hey, while you're laughing, so when I was working with CSX, there was a guy who said the phrase when the rubber meets the road, and the person in the room got offended because that's trucking, their
This,
competitors. So he
he
said, you
was
should have
worried
said,
about the steel, huh?
steel
Steel
meets
on the
the
rail.
rail. Yeah, it's when steel meets the rail, Ray, not
Yeah,
when rubber meets the road. And
it's
for
true.
those of
Trucking's still bigger industry.
Right. And for those of the folks who don't know your background, you've been a West Point graduate, worked in the armed forces, you've been the CEO of huge, three huge companies, and so recently retired. So and significantly involved in the church. So I really, truly appreciate your perspective, Ray, and thank you for your time. And while I miss our breakfast, I will settle for a Zoom side chat with you.
Okay, Krishna. Nice. Thank you for taking the time. Tell Sangeeta and Nayan and Lake I said hello. I wish them the very, very best, and especially for you.
Thank you, and same
Okay.
to your family. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Love you.
Thank you.
Bye.
This is Krishna Pendyala wishing you all well and reminding you to always be open to new perspectives. Take care.